customer profitability. So the company sells small machine parts to heavy equipment manufacturers for an average price of $1.05 per part. There are two types of customers: those who place small, frequent orders, and those who place larger, less frequent orders. Each time an order is placed and processed, the setup is required. Scheduling is also needed to coordinate the many different orders that come in and place demands on the plant's manufacturing resources. Emery also inspects a sample of the products each time a batch is produced to ensure that the customer specifications have been met. Inspection takes essentially the same time regardless of the type of part being produced. Emery's cost accounting department has provided the following budgeted data for customer-related activities and costs, the amounts expected for the coming year. So we have now the column for frequently ordering customers and the less frequently ordering customers. For the sales orders, average order size, number of setups, scheduling hours, inspections, and the average unit cost. Now, noted that this cost does not include the cost of the following customer-related activities. So this totals 12,390,000. For requirement number 1, assign the customer-related activity cost to each category of customers in proportion to the sales revenue earned by each customer type. Calculate the profitability of each customer type and discuss the problems with this measure of customer profitability. Now, in number 11, we are going to determine first, the sales revenue is 1.05 multiplied by 44,100,000. Now, this 44,100,000 is taken by multiplying the number of sales orders by the average order size. So we have 21,000 and multiplied by 2,100, or 2,100 multiplied by 21,000. So that now gives us 44,100,000. So the sales revenue of 46,305,000 for each customer type. And here we have the customer-related activity costs are split equally. So equally to both two types of customers. So given is 12,390,000 split equally. So we have 6,195,000. The profitability of each category is as follows. The sales revenue of 46,305,000, and we have the non-customer related cost that's given at an average unit cost of 56 cents. So we multiply by 44,100,000. The number of order sizes. So we get 24,696,000. And the customer-related activity cost of 6,195,000 computed above. So we have the total of the two deductions. We have For 6,305,000, deduct the non-related and the customer-related activity cost. We have now the profitability of 15,414,000. Now, this profitability measure is suspect because of the customer-related costs are assigned using revenues. A driver that's not causally related to the customer-related activity cost. This approach may actually have one set of customers subsidizing the other. Now, for requirement number 2, assign the customer-related activity cost to each customer type using activity rates. Now, calculate the profitability of each customer category. As a manager, how would you use this information? So in number 2, we are now using activity-based customer costing. First, we calculate the activity rates for assigning costs. For the processing sales orders, we have 2,310,000 divided by the number of sales orders. 2,100 plus 21,000. So it's 23,100, giving $100 per order. For the scheduling of production, given is 1,260,000 divided by 42,000. Scheduling hours, 36,750 and 5,250. So number of scheduling hours is 42,000. So that's 30 per scheduling hour. Then setting up equipment of 3,780,000 divided by 31,500. Setting up equipment, and the number of setups is 31,500. So you get $120 per setup. And inspecting batches, inspection is a total of 26,250 and 5,250. So that's 31,500. That's $160 per inspection. Next, we assign the cost to the customers, those who place frequent orders and those with infrequent orders. So we have now the processing sales orders at 100 per order. So we multiply $100 by the number of orders. Scheduling production, we multiply $30 per scheduling hour times the number of scheduling hours. Then for setting up equipment, we multiply the rate per setup of $120. We multiply by the number of inspection hours. And for inspecting batches, again, we multiply the rate of 160 by the number of inspection hours. So we now get the total customer cost for the frequent orders, 10,552,000 and only 1,837,500. So the total of the two is for 12,390,000. So now we compute for the profitability. For the frequent orders, the sales revenue for both of 46,305, and we deduct other costs. For the customer-related cost, and the 1,837,500 for the customer-related cost. So we now get the difference for the customer profitability of 11,056,500. While for the infrequent, that's for 19,771,500. This outcome reveals that customers who place smaller, more frequent orders are not as profitable as believed. To increase profitability of this segment, management may consider the possibility of imposing a charge for orders below a certain size, thus reducing the demands on the four customer-related activities with a subsequent reduction in cost. Another possibility is to offer quantity discounts to encourage larger orders. Now we go to exercise 11-12. We have the product life cycle. The following series of statements or phrases are associated with product life cycle viewpoints. Identify whether each one is associated with the marketing, production, or customer viewpoint. Where possible, identify the particular characteristic being described. If the statement or phrase fits more than one viewpoint, label it as interactive and explain. In other words, if you have two or more viewpoints involved, then you have to use interactive. Letters A. Sales are increasing at an increasing rate. Now, this is the marketing viewpoint under the growth stage. Letter B. The cost of maintaining the product after it is purchased. So we have post-purchase cost, customer viewpoint. C. The product is losing market acceptance and sales are beginning to decrease. So we have the marketing viewpoint or the decline stage. The decline stage. Then in letter D, a design is chosen to maximize post-purchase cost. So we have interactive, production, and customer viewpoints. The linkage between design and the cost of using, maintaining, and disposing of the product is being exploited. So under interactive with production and customer viewpoints. Now for letter E, 90% or more of the costs are committed during the development stage. So it's production, it's the cost commitment curve. In letter F, the length of time that the product serves the needs of a customer viewpoint, consumable life. G, all the costs associated with the product for its entire life cycle is production, life cycle cost. Letter H, the time in which a product generates revenue for a company is marketing viewpoint, revenue producing life. Then in letter I, profits tend to reach peak levels during this stage. In letter I, we have an interactive viewpoints, marketing and customer viewpoints. Growth stage for marketing and customer value characteristics. What the customer receives for the price paid is important, yet competition is still not at its peak. Then letter J, customers have the lowest price sensitivity during this stage. So again, interactive, marketing and customer viewpoints, introduction stage, and customer value are interacting. Here, customers tend to be innovators and are willing to try a new product, but performance expectation tend to be high. Then in letter K, describes the general sales pattern of a product as it passes through distinct life cycle stages. So in letter K, marketing defines the marketing life cycle viewpoint. And the letter L, the concern is with product performance and price. So letter L, customer, describes the customer life cycle viewpoint. Letter M, actions taken so that life cycle profits are maximized. Interactive life cycle cost management relies on knowledge of the linkages among all three viewpoints. And the last emphasizes internal linkage activities that are needed to develop, produce, market, and service products. We have production, describes the production life cycle viewpoint. Next is number 13. We have DA if it is direct attribution, DT if the driver tracing, and EL for allocation, which we are going to indicate before and after JIT. DA if each cell has a meter. B assumes engineers are assigned to cells. And C, some might argue that cell square footage would be a good driver so that this is now DT. We now know how much space is dedicated to each product. So we now have DA for direct attribution, DT for direct tracing, and AL for allocation. So again, DA, DT, and AL before and after JIT. So inspection cost, before JIT, it was driver tracing. After JIT, it's direct attribution. Power to heat, light, and cool plant, both allocation. Minor repairs on production equipment, DT and DA, salary of production supervisor, department per cell, allocation before JIT and after JIT already direct attribution. Oil to lubricate machinery is DT and AL, then salary of plant supervisor, both AL, cost to set up machinery, DT and DA. Salaries of janitors, both AL, and then power to operate production equipment, both DT, and taxes on plant and equipment, AL, depreciation on production equipment, DT and DA, raw materials, DA, salary of industrial engineer, DT and DA, parts for machinery, DT and DA, pencils and paper clips for production supervisor, DT and DA, and insurance on plant and equipment, both AL, overtime wages for cell workers, DT and DA, plant depreciation are both AL unless you have the asterisk, materials handling, DT and DA, preventive maintenance, DT and DA. Now take note of the notes at the bottom. Now we go to number 14. Number 14, we now have the features of JIT and product costing accuracy. So we have the features of JIT and product costing accuracy. Compute the pre-JIT maintenance cost per unit for each product. Compute the maintenance cost per unit after installing JIT and explain why the JIT maintenance cost per unit is more accurate than the pre-JIT cost. Prior to installing JIT system, Barker Company, a producer of automobile parts, used maintenance hours to assign maintenance costs to its three products: wheels, brake pads, and ball bearings. The maintenance cost totaled 5,880,000 per year. The maintenance hours used by each product and the quantity of each product produced are as follows. So we have the maintenance hours and the quantity produced. After installing JIT, manufacturing cells, three were created and cell workers were trained to perform preventive maintenance and minor repairs. A full-time maintenance person was also assigned to each cell. Maintenance costs for the three cells still totaled 5,880,000. However, these costs are now traceable to each cell as follows. So we now compute for the maintenance cost per maintenance hour, 5,880,000. That's the total maintenance cost. Divide this by the total of 600,000 maintenance hours. So you add the maintenance hours with total of 600,000 maintenance hours. So the rate is 9.80 per maintenance hour. And for the wheels, we multiply the number of maintenance hours. Here we have to multiply 9.80 by 180,000 maintenance hours and divide it by the number of units. So we get 11.20 per unit. And for the pads, we multiply 9.80 per maintenance hours by 180,000 maintenance hours. We now get the product divided by the number of units, so you get per unit. And for the bearings, 980 times 240,000 maintenance hours divided by 210,000 units. Now, for number 2, after the installation of JIT, the wheels now 1,596,000 for the cell on wheels. We divide it by the number of units, so we get 10.13 per unit. For the pads, it's 11.20, and for the bearings, it's 12 per unit. The JIT cost is more accurate because maintenance cost is directly traced to each product. There is no need to use the activity drivers such as maintenance hours to assign this cost to each product. This improved traceability can be explained by two factors. So we have now the multitask training and decentralization of services. Next, we go to number 15, backflash versus the traditional. So, Packer Company is installed a JIT purchasing and manufacturing system and is using backflash accounting for its cost flows. It currently uses a two-trigger approach with the purchase of materials as the first trigger point and the completion of goods as the second. So first is the purchase of materials and the second is the completion of goods. During the month of June, Qatar had the following transactions: raw materials purchased, direct labor cost, overhead cost, conversion cost applied. So 40,000 labor plus 222,720 nga overhead. Amo na ang iyang application. So we now have the conversion cost applied of 263,250. So bali ang applications ng overhead is 222,750. Ang actual nga overhead cost is 202,500. There were no beginning or ending inventories. All goods produced were sold with a 60% markup, and variance is close to cost of goods sold, and the variances are recognized monthly. Prepare the journal entries that would have been made using the traditional approach. So we now record materials, credit to accounts payable, debit to work in process for the material applications, and credit to materials inventory, debit to work in process, and credit to wages payable for direct labor, debit to overhead control for actual overhead, credit accounts payable, debit to work in process inventory, and credit to overhead applied for 222,750. Now, we record finished goods inventory of 506,250 taken by adding materials, direct labor, and factory overhead applied. So 243,000 of direct materials, 40,500 of direct labor, and 222,750 of factory overhead applied. So you get 506, 250. We now debit to finished goods and credit to work in process inventory, debit to cost of goods sold, credit finished goods inventory, and debit to accounts receivable at 60% markup based on 506,250. We multiply it by 1.6, so we get 210,000 credit to sales. Debit overhead control, 20,250, and credit to cost of goods sold. So in other words, this is the factory overhead variance, which is the difference between the amount applied of 222,750 and the actual of 202,500. So there's a difference of 20,250. It is over applied because the applied is greater than the actual. So for the variance recording, we debit to overhead control and credit to cost of goods sold. So this will reduce cost of goods sold. Now in requirement number 2, prepare the journal entries for the month by using backflash costing. So first, we debit to raw materials and in process. Or maybe you debit only raw and in process. And credit to accounts payable. Debit conversion cost control for the actual amount of overhead and for direct labor. So we now debit to finished goods inventory, credit conversion cost control for 263,250. That's the sum of your factory overhead applied of 222,750 and direct labor cost of 40,500. And we now close raw materials and in process inventory for 243,000. We now debit to cost of goods sold 506,250 and credit back finished goods inventory. Debit accounts receivable for the sales and credit to sales revenue. Now we record the variance debiting to conversion cost control and credit to cost of goods sold. Now that's for requirement number 2. Then number 3, we have backslash costing variation 2. Refer to number 15. Prepare the journal entries for the month of June using backslash, assuming that Porter uses the sale of goods as the trigger point instead of the completion of goods. So we now debit to row in the in-process inventory credit accounts payable, debit to conversion cost control, credit accounts payable for the actual factory overhead, credit wages payable for direct labor. Now we debit to cost of goods sold, recording now row and in process and conversion cost control. We finally credit the amount applied and direct labor. So debit to accounts receivable, credit sales, and we finally close conversion cost control for the factory overhead variance. For number 17, we have now the traditional costing variation 3 and 4. Refer to exercise 7-15. So we now debit to conversion cost control for factory overhead actual and direct labor. Then we debit to finished goods, credit accounts payable, and conversion cost control for the amount applied. Then we debit to cost of goods sold, credit finished goods, inventory, and debit to accounts receivable, credit sales, and finally close the variance. Then for problem 17, conversion cost control and credit accounts payable and wages payable, debit cost of goods sold. So directly, we close to cost of goods sold. We do not pass finished goods anymore. Credit accounts payable and conversion cost control. Debit accounts receivable and credit to sales, and finally record the variance. Now for problem number 18. Exercise 18. Here, the requirement, allocate the inspection cost to each department and compute the overhead cost per unit for each monitor. Overhead rates use direct labor hours. Now, the company produces 2 types of glucose monitors, basic and advanced. Both pass through 2 producing departments, fabrication and assembly. Bunker also has inspection department that is responsible for testing monitors to ensure that they perform within specified tolerance ranges. So sampling procedure is used. Budgeted data for the 3 departments are as follows. So we have now the overhead and for fabrication and assembly. Number of tests, direct labor hours. In the fabrication department, the basic model requires 0.5 hour of direct labor, and the advanced model requires 1 hour. In the assembly department, the basic model requires 0.7 hour of direct labor, and the advanced model required 1.25 hours. There are 45,000 basic units produced and 24,000 advanced units. Immediately after preparing the budgeted data, a consultant suggests that two manufacturing cells be created, one for the manufacture of the basic model and the other for the manufacture of the advanced model. Raw materials would be delivered each cell and goods would be shipped immediately to customers upon completion. Workers within each cell would also be trained to perform monitor testing. The total direct overhead cost estimated for each cell would be 228,000 for the basic cell and 720,000 for the advanced cell. Allocate the inspection cost to each department and compute the overhead cost per unit for each monitor with the use of direct labor hours in computing the overhead rates. So in the assembly, here we have the allocation ratio 0.25 and fabrication of 0.75. That's now your allocation ratio. So 0.5 and 1. So meaning we have 0.25 and fabrication is 0.75. The maintenance, the allocation is based on the number of tests. So the number of tests of 30, 90, so meaning 30 and 90 is 120,000. So 3 over 12 is 25% and 9 over 12 is 75%. That's why we allocate 25% to assembly and 75% to fabrication. Now, for the maintenance allocation, 0.25 to assembly and 0.75 to fabrication. And we have now the direct overhead cost, 720,000 to fabrication. And we have the amount of 204,000 to assembly. So will you try to correct ang maintenance, 0.25 times 480, 120,000 is to assembly. Kag ang fabrication, 360. Okay na. Then for direct overhead cost, sa assembly is 204,000 and to fabrication is 720,000. So will you get the correct total there? 720,000 plus we have the amount of kaiman ang fabrication as stated, ang basis is the number of tests. So, ang fabrication, 0.25. Kag ang assembly, 0.75. So, bali, sala lang ang pagbutang sang columns. Take note, the rates or the ratios are computed based on the number of tests. Now, the number of tests, the fabrication is 30,000. That of the assembly is 90,000. So, the total is 120,000. So, bali, ang kay fabrication is 30 over 120. That would mean 25%. Kay assembly is 490 test over 120. So it means 75%. Now, in adding the overhead, first we allocate the overhead of 840. So pila ang makadto kay fabrication, kag pila ang makadto kay assembly. So ang 480, ang makadto kay fabrication is 120, kag ang kay assembly is 360. So that means total of 480. And the direct overhead cost ni fabrication is 720. Ang kay assembly is 204. So the total cost of the fabrication is 840, while that of the assembly is 564. So will you try to correct on the totals? Kay masala ka mo. So I'll repeat, ang fabrication, ang iyang pag-allocate anay sang inspection cost. Fabrication, 30 over 120 or 25%. So out of 480, 120,000 will go to fabrication. And 360,000 will go to assembly. And for the direct overhead cost, ni fabrication, 720, ang kay assembly, 204. So, bali ang total ni fabrication is 840,000. Ang kay assembly is 564. Okay? So, bali assembly, 564. Fabrication, 840. Correct na, ha? Only that, medyo hindi maayo ang pag-extend. So, the overhead rate based on direct labor hours for each department. So, the fabrication, 840,000 divided by 72,000 hours. So that will be equal to 11.67 per direct labor hour. Ang assembly is 564,000 divided by 36,000 direct labor hours. So that will be 15.67. Now you have the overhead rates. And the unit cost, the basic is 11.67 times 0.5. Department, in fabrication department, the basic model requires 0.5 hour of direct labor, and the advanced model requires 1 hour. So the unit cost and basic is 11.67 multiplied by 0.5 hour, and that's the amount plus 15.67 times 70%. In the assembly department, the basic model requires 0.7 hour of direct labor. The advanced model requires 1.25 hours. So we have 15.67 times 0.7. So you have now 16.80. And the advance, 11.67 times 1 plus 15.67 times 1.25. So that means 31.26. And for number 2 requirement, compute the overhead cost per unit. If manufacturing cells are created, which unit overhead cost do you think is more accurate? The one completed with a departmental structure or the one computed using a cell structure. So in number 2, the basic is 228,000 divided by 45,000. So you are now given 228,000 for the basic divided by 45,000. That would mean 5.07 per unit. And for the advance, 720,000 divided by 24,000. So that's for a total of 69,000. That's already the JIT cost is more accurate because it has more cost that can be assigned using direct tracing. So you are now given 45,000 basic units produced and 24,000 units advanced. In requirement number 3, note that the total overhead costs for the cell structure are lower. Explain why. JIT manufacturing should result in more efficient production and thus cost would be reduced. For example, the multidisciplinary nature of cells would virtually eliminate the inspection department, producing significant savings. Other savings, such as elimination of most materials handling costs due to the cell structure. Okay, now I will continue with problem 7-24. And if we can touch on number 27. So number 24 and number 27 for the remaining two problems. Okay, number 24, problem 7-24. Internal linkages, cost management, and strategic decision making. Using normal volume, compute the manufacturing cost per labor hour before the year of design changes. What is the cost per unit of an average product? Evans as a unit-based costing system. Evans Miami plant produces 10 different electronic products. The demand for each is about the same. Although they differ in complexity, each product uses about the same labor time and materials. The plant has used direct labor hours for years to assign overhead to products to help design engineers understand the assumed cost relationships. The cost accounting department developed the following cost equation. The equation describes the relationship between total manufacturing cost and direct labor hours. The equation is supported by a coefficient of determination of 60%. Y is equal to 5 million plus 0.31x, where x is the direct labor hours. Okay, the variable rate of 30, that's 30x by the way. The variable rate of 30 is broken down as follows. Direct labor 9, variable overhead 5, direct material 16. Because of competitive pressures, product engineering was given the charge to redesign product to reduce the total cost of manufacturing. Using the above cost relationships, product engineering adopted the strategy of redesigning to reduce direct labor content. As each design was completed, an engineering change order was cut, triggering a series of events such as design approval, vendor selection, bill of materials update, redrawing of schematic, test runs, changes in setup procedures, development of new inspection procedures, and so on. After 1 year of design changes, the normal volume direct labor was reduced from 250,000 hours to 200,000 hours with the same number of products being produced. And although its product differs in its labor content, the redesign efforts reduce the labor content for all products. On average, the labor content per unit of product dropped from 1.25 hours per unit to 1 hour per unit. Fixed overhead, however, increased from 5 million to 6 million per year. Suppose that the consultant was hired to explain the increase in fixed overhead costs. The consultant study revealed that the $30 per hour rate captured the unit level variable cost. However, the cost behavior of other activities was quite different. For example, setting up equipment is a step fixed cost where each step is 2,000 setup hours costing $90,000. This study also revealed that the cost of receiving goods is a function of the number of different components. This activity has a variable cost of $2,000 per component type and a fixed cost that follows a step cost pattern. The step is defined by 20 components with a cost of $50,000 per step. Assume also that the consultant indicated that the design adopted by the engineers increased the demand for setups from 20,000 setup hours to 40,000 and the number of differential components from 100 to 250. The demand for other non-unit level activities remained unchanged. The consultant also recommended that management take a look at rejected design for its products. This rejected design increased direct labor content from 250,000 hours to 260,000 hours, decreased the demand for setups from 20,000 to 10,000 hours, and decreased the demand for purchasing from 100 component types to 75, while the demand for all other activities remain unchanged. Using normal volume, compute the manufacturing cost per labor hour before the year of design changes. What's the cost per unit of an average product? So we have now the cost per labor hour equal to 5 million plus 7,000, 7.5 million, which is computed by multiplying 30 by 250,000 direct labor hours. So we now get 12.5 million divided by 250,000 direct labor hours. So it gives us 50 per hour. And the cost per unit of the average product is 50 times 1.25. That's 62.50. The cost per hour is 6,600 plus 6,000 computed by multiplying 30 by 200,000 direct labor hours. So we get 6,000 divided by 250,000 hours, we get 63 per hour. The cost per unit of the average product is $63. Now, in requirement number 2, using a normal volume after 1 year of design changes, compute the manufacturing cost per hour. What is the cost per unit of an average product? So the design after cost per hour here is already given in number 2. Before considering the consultant study, what do you think is the most likely explanation for the failure of the design changes to reduce manufacturing costs? Now use the information from the consultant study to explain the increase in the average cost per unit of product. What changes would you suggest to improve Evans' efforts to reduce cost? So now number 3, the design changes increase non-unit based overhead activities while decreasing unit-based cost. This is suggested by the fact that engineering change orders triggered a number of overhead-related activities such as changes in setup, inspection, and purchasing activities. Thus, so-called fixed overhead increased by 1.6 million. Reduction in labor content may have come at the expense of increasing the demand for non-unit related activities supported by the analysis of the effects of the design changes in setups and purchasing. So we have now setups, change in demand for setup. So we have now 20,000 divided by 2, we get 10 steps. While we have now your change in resource spending. Change in resource spending. 10 steps times 90,000 is 900,000. Now for the receiving, change in demand for purchasing is 250 minus 100. We have 150 component types. And the change in steps demand 150 divided by 20 equals 7.5. Thus, reducing 8 steps, partial steps cannot be acquired. And change in variable activity cost, 150 times 2,000, 300,000. Fixed cost is, now take note that we have second change in fixed cost, 8 times 50,000 equals 400,000 in total change of 700,000. The engineers did not have a correct view of existing internal linkages. To exploit internal linkages, it's imperative that internal value chain activities be identified with their associated cost drivers. So we have now 11 thus 24 in requirement number 4. Explain why the consultant recommended second look at a rejected design. Provide computational support. And what does this tell you about the strategic importance of cost management? So for the cost of producing, it decreases by 250,000 for the rejected design using the unit level activities. The change of 10,000 times 30 or 300,000. The setup cost change is 10,000 divided by 2,000 with the 5-step reduction times 90,000. So that means 10,000 divided by 2 is 5,000. And we have to multiply it by 90,000. We have the 90,000 cost reduction. In the receiving, that's purchasing demand change 75 to 100, there's a difference of 25. And decrease in steps is 25 divided by 20. That's rounded to nearest whole unit. Decrease in variable activity cost 2,000 times 25, you get 50,000. Decrease in step fixed cost 50,000, and total change is 300,000 minus 450,000 minus the 250,000. Now the rejected design actually produces a 250,000 savings relative to the current design. Relative to the accepted new design, the savings is 1.6 million more, emphasizing the importance of having the facts correct when making strategic changes. ABC links output with activities and other activities. For ABC links output with activities and activities with cost. Thus, any change in product design with an impact on activities could be associated with cost changes. By describing cost behavior better, okay, with problem 7-27, internal and external linkages, strategic cost management. Now required in number 1, compute the total savings possible as reflected by Kate's handout. Assume that resource spending is reduced where possible. So we have now the parties involved here. We have Maxwell Company produces a variety of kitchen appliances, including cooking ranges and dishwashers. Over the past several years, competition has intensified in order to maintain and perhaps increase its market share. Maxwell's management decided that the overall quality of its products had to be increased. Furthermore, costs needed to be reduced so that the selling prices of its products could be reduced. After some investigation, Maxwell concluded that many of its problems could be traced to the unreliability of the parts that were purchased from outside suppliers. Many of these components failed to work as intended, causing performance problems. Over the years, the company had increased its inspection activity of the final products. If a problem could be detected internally, then it was usually possible to rework the appliance so that the desired performance was achieved. Management increased its warranty coverage. Warranty work had been increasing over the years. David Hyde, president of Maxwell, called a meeting with his executive committee lead, chief engineer, Kit, controller, and Jimmy Mitchell, including purchasing manager, were all in attendance. How to improve the company's competitive position was the meeting's topic. The conversation, the meeting was recorded as seen on the. So we now go to screen shared, ha? We go to the requirement, compute the total savings possible in 11-27 at 7-27. 27 we have to compute the total savings possible. So the savings, the purchasing will have savings of 1,500 part types times 30 plus 45,000 times 15 clerks. Inspecting 40,000 times 12 inspectors working 25 times 37,500 units rework. In the warranty, 35,000 times 13 agents plus 15 times 5,500 units. The total savings of 2,675,000. Requirement 2. Explain how redesign and supplier evaluation are linked to the savings computed in requirement 1. Discuss the importance of recognizing and exploiting internal and external linkages. The redesign reduces the number of different parts by creating products that uses interchangeable parts. This reduces the demand for purchasing activity and at the same time makes it easier to implement quality-related improvements. Supplier evaluation identifies suppliers that are willing and able to provide defect-free parts. As the number of defect-free parts increases, the demand for inspection, rework, and warranty activities diminishes. This example illustrates the importance of both internal and external linkages. By connecting the internal activity redesign to such activities as purchasing, inspection, rework, and warranty. Requirement number 3, identify the organizational and operational activities involved in the strategy being considered by Maxwell. What is the relationship between these two activities? So the operational activities include designing, evaluating suppliers, inspecting, purchasing, rework, and warranty. Related organizational activities include complexity, providing quality and redesigning and producing quality, organizational activities tend to determine the day-to-day activities performed by an organization. Day-to-day activities, on the other hand, can suggest or point out organizational activities that need improvement. In this example, complexity was minimized by reducing the number of different parts. The approach to quality was changed to emphasize total quality defect-free, and engineering design was used to reduce complexity. Thus, we can say there is a circular relationship between organizational and operational activities. Okay, so that ends our discussions on this problems. So by Monday, we are going to have the report on the next chapter. Okay, thank you. And God bless everyone.
Ma'am, mapa-attendance lang ko ni Ma'am Pedregosa present.
Oh.